Welcome back. I'm Barry Craig. Coming up next on the Union Label will be a conversation with Larry Sanderson, who has packed a Plumbers and Steamfitters Local 184 card for 58 years. Welcome back. I'm Barry Craig, your host for the Union Label. I'm a member of the American Federation of Teachers and the Kentucky State AFL-CIO Executive Board. My guest today is, I guess we'd call him a veteran trade unionist, Larry Sanderson, 58-year member of the Plumbers and Steamfitters Local 184. Joined when he was 19 years old. Welcome to the program. I should say welcome back.
Thank you, Barry.
It's been a while.
It has. A few years, yeah.
I've always been intrigued by the fact that your local is still called Plumbers and Steamfitters, whereas some of them are called Plumbers and Pipefitters. Why did you guys decide to stick with that the
well,
title?
that's just we were chartered back in 1899, and that's the way it was back then, Plumbers and Steamfitters, and we just stayed with it.
Yeah.
You know, but we're the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentices in the plumbing and pipe fitting industry, but we're still steamfitters, and we just like to be called that.
Explain that, because I see it sometimes referred to as UA, and then you got Plumbers and Steamfitters. So
the UA is we're the United Association we're 350,000 strong in the United States and Canada, and the United Association is the general office. And we're affiliated with them, and you know, you got plumbing locals, pipe fitting locals, service technician locals, sprinkler fitter locals.
Right.
You know, so there's a different variety.
Yeah. So what prompted you to join 184?
Well, my dad was a member. He became a member in 1947, and I was working on the river in 1965 on a towboat. And I had applied for the apprenticeship because I guess my dad, I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And my mom called me one night coming upriver from Natchez, Mississippi, and told me I'd been accepted into the apprenticeship. And I got off the boat the next morning in Greenville, Mississippi, and hitchhiked to the bus station and came back to Paducah to accept the apprenticeship.
Yeah. Were you a deckhand?
Yes, deckhand.
That's a rough job.
Yeah,
and a dangerous job.
Yeah, but I did like it. I have to say, it ran from St. Louis to New Orleans.
Wow, that's kind of like Mark Twain, I guess.
Yeah, well, I remember I was working on the river when they were building the Gateway Arch, and I remember the Gateway Arch going up.
Oh,
you know.
Yeah. So, how would you say that 184 has changed since you joined? Obviously, technical, computers.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I'm an old timer. I'm a paper and pencil man.
Me too.
The technology has really changed. There's no doubt about it. And kids they're smart. They're smart. I mean, they really are. And I'm proud of the youngsters nowadays. I believe that they've got a good future ahead of them, and I'm proud that I'm a member, and I try to respect the ones that came before me, and I hope they do too.
Mm-hmm. We're going to wind up this program with a snippet of a speech you gave. I believe it was Las Vegas a few years ago.
You are.
Yeah, about the old men, the overalls. Tremendous speech.
Yeah.
Now Larry won't talk about himself, but I will. He is one tremendous speaker. The first time I heard him speak was at a Labor Day picnic out at Carson Park many years ago. It was kind of a lull, and I went to get a barbecue sandwich and a Sprite. And my God, I thought Henry Clay had come back alive. He was speaking. I ran back, and he's a tremendous speaker. He won't say that, but he is. Trust me, he is. So you rose up through the union ranks. Talk about climbing the ladder.
Well, I served a 5-year apprenticeship starting in '65, topped out in 1970. And I wasn't very interested in politics when I first got into local, but I listened to the older fellows, and I realized that politicians affect things that you do. Mm-hmm. They can wipe out benefits that's been accrued over the years with just a signing of a pen, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
And I got involved and got interested, and I backed a man named Chester Wright for business manager. I don't know if you remember, they called him Ratchet Wright.
Yeah.
And he appointed me his assistant. in 1979, and that's how I got my start at the local as far as in the political end of it. Then I was elected in 81, in 84, and
Now, back in the day,
been that way ever since.
back in the day, they were called what, business agents. Now they're called business managers.
We call it, yeah, but it's just a technical term.
Yeah, but they were called BAs.
BAs back then, and I was the BA. He was the business manager, and then he went out to the apprenticeship school and took over out there, and I ran for business manager and won in '81. So he was a good man and a good friend of mine.
You know, I've talked many times about the importance of politics. About politics affects almost everything. Certainly with unions. You talked about a stroke of a pen.
Yeah.
With the stroke of a pen, this Republican governor and Republican legislature got rid of prevailing wage and passed the right to work law. That can happen. Are young people in the unions as aware of how important politics is?
You know, of course, I've been retired for 12 years. It seems to me that I don't know if they take it as important as they should. Because there's an old saying, you elect your friends and defeat your enemies. Now, I don't understand supporting somebody that's against you, against what you stand for. My daddy told me one time, if they try to break your plate, they're not your friend. And by that I mean, they try to take food off your table by passing legislation that tries to hurt you. And that's, and we've got super majorities in the House and the Senate now in Kentucky, and they're not friends of labor.
Right.
And our people ought to know that. I know you're going to have disagreements with all politicians, but the main thing with me is, are they a friend of labor? And if they're not, I cannot support them and will not support them.
Right, right.
And I think the youngsters should be that way too.
Yep. But again, I think you're right. How do you convince young folks that what goes on in Frankfort and Washington has a direct bearing? Well, as far as that's concerned, the McCracken County Courthouse and the Paducah City Hall. How do you convince young people that this has a real bearing? They can break your plate, as your dad said.
Well, that is true. It's hard. I guess sometimes I feel like that maybe the youngsters think that everything just happened, that the money they make, the pensions and the health benefits they have, it just happened. Well, it didn't just happen. People had to work for it and negotiate for it. And I'll have to say this, from the other side, on the business side, we've got some good contractors in this area that we work with, and some of them were homegrown through the local and went on to be in business. But you've got to people, sometimes I think they get maybe a little, I won't say lazy, but maybe lackadaisical or something, and they don't seem to care about what the politicians do. And they, like you said, when Bevin came in, the first order of business was to whack at organized labor, and they did it. And I keep, when I talk to people, when I see people, I tell them, how important it is. I'll never quit telling them. Now, whether they listen or not to this old man, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'll always tell them. And that was instilled in me from guys like Bill Sanders and Bill Hack, guys like that saw some hard times, came through the Depression.
They had to fight the good fight.
Yeah, it's not, the sun doesn't shine on the same place every time, all the time, And our members need to take more notice of politics, in my opinion, and that's why I think this labor luncheon that we're going to have is a good idea, and to show them that we're a viable source in Western Kentucky and all over Kentucky, and that we care about them and we care about the working conditions, safety conditions. I mean, I just wish, now some of the youngsters, they are interested, but some they don't care that much about it.
Right. One thing you mentioned just a little while ago was about the good wages and good benefits from a union job. And many years ago, I had J.R. Gray, great friend of labor in Frankfort, on state rep from Benton.
Knew JR for many years.
Terrific guy. And he said, you know, you get a kid who, right out of high school, has been working in a grocery store, working at some minimum wage, no benefits, goes to work at a plant or any job site, and makes a really gets a good union job, good benefits, good salary, and think, boy, this is such a benevolent company. That look what they did for me. And he said it's really important for unions to stress that it wasn't the company that gave you this, it was the union that fought for this. Do you all stress that in your apprenticeship program?
Yes, we do. I will say that, like I said before, sometimes I think they just don't take it to heart, and they think it just happened. And you're right, Barry. I mean, people had to fight to negotiate to get good wages and working conditions, and that's one of the things I think that needs to be taught more in apprenticeships, schools, and what have you.
Right.
And at the meetings, and stress that at the union meetings.
Do they stress the union meetings enough as far as you're concerned?
I don't go to as many union meetings as I used to since I retired. I try to stay away, and if they need me for anything,
sure.
I'll certainly try to help.
Sure.
But I hope that they do.
Yeah.
Things like that are very important, very important. But I think that one thing that we have to stress now, it used to be back when I started, it seemed like it was us against them. Us against them. Well, we're really in a partnership with our contractors in the construction industry, in the building and trades, and you try to have a little give and take, and you know, as far as negotiations are concerned. An old man told me one time, and I never forgot it. He said, "It's what's not written between those lines of a contract that determines how we get along." And if you think about that, it's the truth. It's what's not written between those lines that determines how you and I get along. And we've been lucky to have some good contractors like Pip Johnson from the old days. If you remember Pip,
I do remember him.
He was a great man. I thought the world of him. And he thought he wanted his employees to have good wages and benefits, and he was a former member of the local.
Was he from the Johnson family of Simpsonia?
Yes, in Simpsonia.
There was Snooty. Was Snooty his brother?
Snooty was his brother. Snake.
Yeah.
Snake Euless.
Wes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and then I served apprenticeship with Snake's boy, Richard Johnson, and then Bub Johnson is Pip's boy.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were a big family.
And Jimmy Johnson's
Jimmy Don Johnson. Jimmy Don Johnson.
Is, and then
was Euless's boy.
Right. And of course Ricky, the late attorney, was of that family.
He was Euless's boy too.
I remember Snooty Johnson, which
Snooty was a good man.
What was his real name?
Daniel.
Daniel. Okay. He was a ball curt gun on a B-17 in World War II. Tremendous story. I mean, this guy was in some of the most ferocious air combat.
Yeah.
But so was Bill Hack. Bill Hack was another bomber crewman.
Yeah.
Two institutions in Western Kentucky here in Paducah is the Labor Day Parade and the Labor Luncheon, which is the Labor Day Parade, obviously Labor Day, and the Labor Luncheon is the Saturday, the Friday before the Fancy Farm Picnic.
Yes.
Talk about the Labor Day Parade. In fact, years ago, you gave me a program from the 1943 Labor Day Parade.
Well, I've got one from the 1912. I know that.
Wow. Well, this one you gave me anyway. And for some reason, the parade stopped after World War II. No one seems to know why.
I don't know why.
But now a bunch of you guys got together and resurrected the parade in the 1970s. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I have to give Glenn Dowdy credit for that. You know, I think he was the force behind kicking the Labor Day Parade back off, and it's the biggest one in Kentucky as far as I know.
And at one time was the official state AFL-CIO Labor Day Parade.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that was anybody always came to our Labor Day Parade. And
Absolutely
it's a
did.
big parade, and and I have to give Glenn credit for that.
Yeah.
A lot of other people helped him, I know, but I'll give him
He
credit
did.
for that.
I remember one Labor Day parade, Governor Steve Beshear was in the parade, and you drove him around in a Corvette.
I drove him around
I
in a
do.
Corvette.
I've got a picture of you all going by and him waving like
Yeah.
that. Now, the labor luncheon, talk about the history of the labor luncheon. That goes back to Lieutenant Governor Paul Patton.
It goes back to, I guess, 1991.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Patton was running for lieutenant governor. Back then, they didn't team up. They didn't
No,
run
they
as
didn't.
a team.
That's right.
They had to run separate.
That's right.
And he was running for lieutenant governor, and Danny Ross was his labor liaison full time.
Now, who was Danny Ross? Tell us about Danny Ross.
Well,
who he
Danny,
was.
he was from Louisville, but he worked in labor for years. But that's how I met him, in 1991, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a go-getter. That's what he was. And he talked to me about me and Gary C.
Mm-hmm.
About
IBEW.
yeah, IBW.
Right.
About sitting down with potential Lieutenant Governor Paul Patton at the time
Mm-hmm.
when he was running. And we got together at Stacy's in the room there in the back where they used to have banquets. I don't know if you remember that or not.
I do.
And 6 or 8 of us got together with Lieutenant Governor candidate Paul Patton. And we really liked him. And he talked our language. And he told me that if he got elected, as long as we would have a get-together, that he would come. Well, it went from like 6 to 8 people to 30 to 40 to 50 to 300 and something. I remember, I'll tell you, you remember Bobby Holman?
Mm-hmm.
She had it at her restaurant
Right.
one year before she was tragically killed.
Right.
And Bobby helped us a lot. I think we had it there 2 years. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. When then Paul Patton was elected governor, and he kept the same promise. He said, as long as you have it, I'll be here. And he was for 2 terms. And then Steve Beshear after him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then when Ernie Fletcher was elected, it kind of died down a little
Right,
bit. And
right.
then when Steve came in after that, it kicked back up.
Right. Right.
But it was just something. The Friday before Fancy Farm on Saturday every year, and it was a big event in McCracken County, maybe the biggest event in McCracken
it
County
was.
before Fancy Farm.
Oh yeah.
And
I can remember some of the, of course, the governors, the Democratic governors always showed up.
yes, and the whole slate.
The whole slate did. And
yeah.
then one year, if you remember, the Congress, John Yarmouth, Congressman of Louisville, came down and emceed it.
And one year I had to be in at a convention in Vegas, one of our national conventions, and Mike Miller emceed it for us one year.
Yeah. Now that guy was a throwback to the old time
yeah.
stump speakers. In fact, Daniel Hurt, a mutual friend of ours, was visiting with Daniel, and on his phone he has this Mike Miller speech. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it is.
Was
but well, of course, he was our good friend.
he was.
And we had him MC one that year.
Yeah, he's a very strong,
For us.
very strong
Yeah.
labor supporter.
Yes, he was.
Well, talk about some of the plumbers and steam fitters. Talk about the apprenticeship program. Let's say you're 18 years old and you're interested in becoming a plumber and steam fitter. How do you do that? How do you?
Well, college isn't for everybody.
Right.
We know that. But if you're a young man and you are a woman, we have women
sure.
in the program
Sure
too.
do.
Back
Sure.
when I came in, we didn't, but we do now.
I know.
I was part of bringing the first women in the local.
Yes.
But if you like to work with your hands and like to work outside or whatever, as far as the apprenticeship program, they interview every year in August. They put applications out the first week of July, and then they interview everybody. And from that, from the way you apply yourself and your grades, you've got to be a high school graduate. But then you go in and you sell yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't expect you to know everything about the trade. That's what the apprenticeship's about, to teach you. But attitude has a lot to do with it too. Just, you can tell if somebody wants something or if they just, don't care, And you'd be surprised how many people come in and act like they don't care about anything. But it's a good trade, and like I say, I've been a member 58 years. My sons, stepson, 2 grandsons, son-in-law, they've all served an apprenticeship, and they're all doing well. And I'm proud of that. And my daddy, I was proud of him.
Yeah. One of the slogans of the building trades unions is earn while you learn. And it's one of the few jobs I've ever heard of where you get paid good money while you're learning on the job.
In the apprenticeship program, you go out and you work and you go to school 2 nights a week for 5 years. And I know a lot of people think, well, that's a lot, but it goes by just like that.
Yeah.
And it's just a plus for a young man. I mean, I don't know where you can go to school and then work during the day and get paid good benefits and good wages.
Right.
They start out at a percentage of what the journeyman's rate is, and then goes up as they go in through the apprenticeship program for the 1st to the 5th year.
And you said it's not just young men, it's young women as well.
Yeah, young women. And
What do you see as the future of organized labor in, let's say, Western Kentucky, then nationwide?
Well, there's one thing. We've been here, like I said, next year will be 125 years.
Wow.
We've had ups and downs, there's no doubt, ups and downs. But after all the attacks on us by, all of our legislators here in Western Kentucky, let's just call it like it is, we're still here. And they've tried to weaken us. Some of them would like to destroy us, but it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen. We're gonna be here, and we're gonna be a viable part of this community. And we don't just take. They think we're just out here making good money. We give to charities.
Sure do.
We give to just about every charity that tries for a donation from us, we give it to them.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure all the other building trades locals do the same thing.
Yeah.
But we're going to be a viable force in Western Kentucky till time ends, as far as I'm concerned.
I guess the most conspicuous union project in Western Kentucky is the Jackson House, the Sanders House. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, that was back, how many years ago was the Jackson House built? I can't even remember.
I can't either, but it's been a while ago.
And Bill
Sanders was so instrumental in that.
Bill Sanders was very instrumental in it. And by the way, July the 2nd, he had been dead 24 years.
Wow.
I went by his gravesite Sunday last to visit him. He was a good old man. He really was. He was 91 when he died. He never retired.
He didn't.
He never retired.
I know.
And that Jackson House and the W.B. Sanders Retirement Center.
Named for him.
Named for him.
Yeah.
I was there the day they put the stuff in the cornerstone down there.
Mm-hmm.
And but it has meant a lot to elderly people.
Oh, heavens,
in Western Kentucky.
Yes, there's a real shortage of elderly housing.
Yeah.
And that's a terrific place.
It certainly is.
Another thing that the building trades are very instrumental in, not as well known, is Brooks Stadium.
Oh, Brooks Stadium, yeah.
And Brooks Stadium, by the way, is the only surviving Kitty League ballpark.
My daddy played in the Kitty League.
Did he? Mine did too. When did your dad play?
In the 40s and 50s.
My dad played in 1946 for Mayfield, was a pitcher. Yeah.
My daddy was a shortstop.
Son of a gun. I didn't know
I
that.
used to, Veterans Village, where Elmwood Court is now, that used to be Veterans Village after the war. Mm-hmm. And that's where we lived. And I used to sneak in Brooks Stadium when I was a kid, climb over the fence. Several of us did, and play out there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But Doc Heidig, has really made that thing a showcase.
Oh, it's a beautiful ballpark.
Beautiful ballpark.
It is.
I can remember in the old days when we played there, the lights were bad, the field was bad, but Doc has made it into just looks like a major league park.
It does.
And our local and some of the other building trades locals that have donated our time and money to for the bleachers, the dugouts, all the railing and all that. Electricians worked on the lightings and we've been supportive of it for many years.
Well, if memory serves, they were going to tear that ballpark down. And so you guys kind of jumped in at the last minute and said, we'll help restore it, and you did.
And I remember when they kind of dedicated it after the renovation, I got Governor Paul Patton to come down to
Is that
the
right?
renovation. Yeah, he came down.
Now, did you play in that ballpark when you were on the American Legion team, the state championship team? Yeah.
64.
64.
64 was the state championship team. American Legion. Yeah, that was Joe Freeman was the manager.
Wow.
I remember that.
I think you told me this story, and I hope I've got it right, is that a relative of yours got an autographed baseball, Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris, down in Florida spring training.
That's right.
This would be an incredibly valuable, rare piece of baseball.
My grandfather got it.
Grandfather. What happened to that ball?
My son has it now.
He does?
He has it now. But when I got the ball in 1962, after the year that Maris hit 61 home runs,
That's right.
I got the ball in 62 from spring training. Mickey Mantle had hit a home run.
He had 56, I believe.
And both of them signed the ball.
Yeah.
Well, back in those days, if I had a baseball, that was something that we used to have tape on the ball.
Yep.
Well, I played with it.
That's what I remember you
I
saying.
played with it, but you can still see the signatures on it.
Oh, that's good to
He's
know.
got it enclosed in the
A case.
case now.
But I remember that story. It's like
Yeah.
here you've got this incredibly rare piece of
Roger
baseball.
Maris and Mickey
memorabilia,
Mantle. Yeah.
And you played ball with it,
Yes,
which
I
is
did.
that's hilarious. 'Cause, I mean, there's no telling what that'd be worth.
No, it'd probably be worth a little bit.
Today, I should say so.
Yeah.
Well, we're about out of time. You're obviously, officially retired.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But you're unofficially still active in the movement,
Yes,
and will be as long as you can, I assume.
as long as I live.
Yeah. So to wrap it up, what is the union movement to the United States as a whole? I mean, unions built the middle class.
Well, our president says that.
He does.
And talking about him, in my lifetime, he's the most pro-union president we've ever had.
He is. And he doesn't mention jobs. He mentions union jobs.
He talks about
He
collective
does.
bargaining,
Constantly.
unions, organizing.
Constantly.
All the
Yeah.
time. He really does. And I think some of our members might shortchange him a little bit on that, but he does. Now, we might not agree with everything he does, but husband and wives don't agree all the time.
Do tell.
Yeah, that's right. But Biden, so many times he steps up in front of everybody, whether it's business or labor audience. I'm pro-union.
He does.
Pro-union. Unions built, the middle class built America. The unions
said
built
that many
America.
times.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I think our membership, our leaders in the local unions and in the unions should convey to the membership about Joe Biden.
Very good.
I don't care if he's 80 years old. They talk about him being too old. Franklin Roosevelt was in a wheelchair.
That's true. That's true.
But Joe Biden is our friend. Elect
Indeed.
your friends, defeat your enemies.
There you go. And we'll have to end on that. We're out of time. Hope you'll come back again soon.
Okay.
You know, back when I was a reporter, I could talk as long as I wanted, newspaper. But with this, they got to cut you off. So
They got to cut you off?
They do.
Okay.
They do.
All right.
Thank you all for joining us. I'm Barry Craig. My guest was Larry Sanderson, and we will see you next time.
You know, closing out my 46-year career, speaking to the people that I love and respect so much, it fills me with a passion and an emotion and an energy that's hard to explain. But I'm going to do my best right now to transfer those feelings to you into your heart and your soul. Let the spirit of our forefathers lead you. Stand up and fight back. Fight back for your homes and families. Fight back for future generations of sons and daughters. Fight back in the name of our sacred dead. Fight back. Let no heart be faint. Let every arm be steel. Let nothing less than total victory be acceptable. You, the membership of the UA, can lead the way. You, the membership of the UA, will lead the way. Stand up and fight back. Thank you, brothers. God bless you, and God bless the United Association.